From G20 to the G7, Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the summit. He joined the G7 talks. He took part in the Quad meeting. He also had multiple bilaterals, but one engagement stood out: his meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. It was a complete surprise. Neither side had announced the meeting, but by Friday evening, news trickled in. Prime Minister Modi would meet the Ukrainian president. It was their second meeting, first since the war broke out. Prime Minister Modi promised to do everything he can to help Ukraine. Listen to this.
मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि इसके समाधान के लिए भारत और निजी रूप से मैं स्वयं हमसे जो कुछ भी हो सकता है हम अवश्य करेंगे। यूक्रेन में चल रहा युद्ध पूरे विश्व के लिए बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है। पूरे विश्व पर इसके अनेक प्रकार के प्रभाव भी पड़ेंगे, लेकिन मैं इसे राजनीति या अर्थव्यवस्था का मुद्दा नहीं मानता। मेरे लिए यह मानवता का मुद्दा है, मानवीय मूल्यों का मुद्दा है।
Couple of things to note here. Number one, Prime Minister Modi did not mislabel the situation. He called it a yuddh, which means war. Number two, it shows how strong India's position is. New Delhi has refused to condemn Russia's war, yet the G7 keeps inviting India. New Delhi decides to meet Zelensky face-to-face, yet there is no blowback from Russia. This is what strategic autonomy means. Western media and commentators should take note. They keep clubbing India and China together, but in reality, the policies are very different. For China, this is an opportunity, a chance to undermine the West. That's not the case with India. New Delhi's neutrality is not about hurting or undermining anyone. It's about protecting its own interests. And those are two very different goals. While Zelensky dominated G7 proceedings, the leaders did get some work done. Three things stand out. Number one, the plan to combat economic coercion. It doesn't mention China, but every single provision is aimed at Beijing. The idea is to challenge China's economic might. How? By using alternate supply chains, by imposing multilateral export controls, and by partnering with emerging economies. The US already does this, but now Europe and Japan are also joining. They're creating a separate body to implement this plan. Number two, the nuclear declaration. Remember, this summit was being held in Hiroshima. So the theme of nuclear weapons was prominent. The G7 leaders agreed on reducing nukes. They also committed to the ultimate goal of eliminating all nuclear weapons. It sounds impossible, I know, but the idea is to also send a message to Putin that nuclear weapons is the red line. And finally, number three, more support for Ukraine. G7 leaders promised to fund Kiev's defense and reconstruction. They also hinted at more sanctions on Russia. Looking back, how will this summit be remembered? Most probably for Zelensky's visit. The symbolism of wartime leader visiting Hiroshima is huge. It was a big headline everywhere. Maybe that's why China is acting out, because nobody is really talking about them. Beijing has accused the G7 of smearing and attacking them. They even summoned the Japanese ambassador. The question is why? Well, what else was China expecting from the G7? Their joint statement calls out China on many fronts. The use of force in the South China Sea, the situation near Taiwan, and the human rights crackdown in Tibet and Xinjiang. It was explicit criticism. Let me, in fact, give you an example. There is no legal basis for China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea, and we oppose China's militarization activities in the region. UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak went one step ahead. He called China the biggest threat to the current global order. Listen to this.
First of all, just recognizing the systemic challenge that China poses to the world order. I think it's the only country with both the means and intent to reshape the world order. Its behavior is increasingly authoritarian at home and assertive abroad.
China has criticized that statement too, and their fear is understandable. Beijing's entire strategy is based on two moves: to dominate the global supply chains, to make itself indispensable to other countries, and to divide the Western world, to ensure there is no consensus on policy. But looks like the G7 has realized this strategy, and they've roped in emerging economies to diversify supply chains. They've also unveiled united policy on economic coercion. On paper, these are all welcome moves. But as always, implementation will be key.